This is pretty cool. In this food plot here, it's about a little over an acre in size, and you can see there's like 3 different types of soil in this food plot. Way down there is the wettest portion. See how dark that stuff is? And then kind of in the middle it dries out a little bit, and it's a little bit lighter there. And then way up here, it's not really much of a hill, but it's a little bit up the hill here, and you can see it's kind of more brownish. Still very, you know, loamy sand soil, but it's definitely a little drier up here at certain portions in the summertime. And you can see it's actually a little red when you get into here. I don't know what the neighbor's field looked like. I think there's like a lot of sand in that field right there, but anyways, it's kind of cool to see like the different layers of soil, you know, in just such a small area too. Well, here we are. It's May 16th. We're going to be planting this field today, hopefully, and a few other smaller spots. This is one of our bigger fields. This is just roughly right over an acre in size, like 1.2 acres. This field's, we did soil samples on multiple different food plots, and this one needed the most, so I'm putting about 6 to 7, probably about 7 bags of fertilizer in this one acre field. Last year we had about 2/3 of it into beans. This year it's going to be again about 2/3 into beans, because the neighbor's field over there is all corn. There is some beans in another field over there, but this field is going to be the closest field to the bedding, so it's probably going to get hit harder than the other field out there by the road. So that's why we need a lot of beans in here again. Then maybe next year we'll put a lot of corn or something. I'm going to have about a corn strip, maybe like a 20-yard strip in the middle, splitting across the field, and then we're going to put some corn in this lower stuff right here by the stand, hopefully concealing our access a little bit or whatever, just kind of to fill, because we don't need beans in the whole field, so I want to get some corn here and corn in the middle. So here we go. I'm going to start I got to broadcast this by hand because we didn't fertilize before we plowed, so now I got to use the bag seeder to spread all the fertilizer on. Otherwise I would have used our little cart and pulled it behind the ATV. But anyways, this area and a few other areas are going to get planted today too, so here we go. You can see all the fertilizer, all these little white and brown pellets. Disking is going to work it all in really nicely, and then we'll broadcast some of our beans, and then drag it a little bit, and then plant it. Well, out here checking up on the food plot. This is about a 1.2 acre field. This year we got a little bit of corn in the middle here, beans on that side, and beans on this side. The cranes pulled out at least half of the corn, so we only had probably like a 1/4 acre of corn planted. So when you plant a small amount like that, they can do a lot of damage, which sucks. You can see up here, they didn't get too much of this. When I turn around, that corn was planted from here, which looks pretty good. There's some patches where they ripped it out. The best stuff, the whole field should look like this, right here. They ripped out all this, and the beans are up to right around here. And you can see over there where the blind is, the corn looks good right along the tree line, but right about, you know, where it looks thin, that's where they pulled out a lot of it too. Anyways, the beans look fantastic though, which is good. We got a lot of beans in the field. I just sprayed this. You could see my four-wheeler tracks. So I'll you know, update you probably 2 weeks. This stuff should be really nice, good size by then. You can see all the weeds coming. That's why I sprayed. It's a lot easier to kill the weeds, you know, when they're small, and you can only drive over the beans, you know, until they're about shin high. Then they start getting crushed down pretty bad. But like some of these ones might end up dying, but like that'll definitely recover. Like these ones right here too, they were ran over, but they'll pop right back up. Most of them will. Beans there, and then beans going all the way down that way. Well, I'm out here for the final update on this specific plot. This is the area that was, it's a 1.2 acre food plot. Most of it's beans again this year. And then I had some corn kind of in the middle, separating the two separate bean plantings, because I got beans behind me on this side and then beans way down there. I had about a 15 to 20 yard wide area of corn, and then corn right in front by the deer stand. And a lot of the corn, I don't know if I had this in the last update, but a lot of the corn ended up getting pulled out by the cranes and probably turkeys as well. And a week ago I came in here and disked down the areas that were super thin, and then threw in a whole bunch of corn, like super thick, because I know they're gonna, we already tried replanting this. We drilled in by hand some corn right after it got pulled out, and that got pulled out too. So now I just came in here and disked it up and broadcasted the corn and soybeans, and this is looking really good. Hopefully, you know, I can already see a whole bunch of corn that got pulled out, so they're thinning them out. I put it in thick knowing that, you know, it was gonna get pulled out. But other than this one little spot, I got some beans in this broadcasted area too. But other than this little spot that got pulled out by cranes and turkeys, the rest of the field is looking great. So you can see here's some of the corn that didn't get pulled out. Right there, a lot of it got pulled out, and then this was all corn, and you can see where I replanted, that's where it got pulled out really bad, as well as the stuff right in front here. So if nothing pulled out the corn, the whole field of corn would have all been really nice and big and tall. That's almost like waist high corn already. And then there's the beans over that way, and then the rest of that is beans too. Some of those beans are starting to turn kind of yellowish. I broadcasted a little bit of extra 92631, because I know this field particular is very low in the potassium and potash, and a lot of our soils and a lot of our other plots are really low in that too. It's really dark, you know, soil, but it's kind of deceiving because a lot of our ground out here is really, really low in potassium and phosphorus. So you can see the beans are turning kind of like brownish yellow. You can kind of see a yellowish tint, especially usually right in this area is the worst. Usually up there it's a little better, but again, it's a little bit yellow. And then that side of the field's usually better, and that's the case this year too. It's not really kind of turning yellow. So like I said, I did broadcast one extra bag only on this side. That was yesterday before the rain. I mean, look at this corn. It's a little bit past my knee, but these beans again, they have kind of also a weird brownish on the weeds, but on the leaves I mean. But overall, this side of the plot doesn't have that yellowish tint nearly as much, and the plants just look healthier, bigger leaves. It's a little drier over here, but still not super dry. I had to come back in here. You can see I had to come back in here and respray specifically this side. I sprayed a little bit over there again, only the beans, because a lot of these weeds survived the first spraying, and you can see some of them even survived the second spraying. I mixed the second spraying at 3 ounces per gallon of the glyphosate, and
killed most of them, but some of these ones that are gonna make it are gonna, you know, produce a few seeds and drop. That's why this is that lamb's quarters. This is a really tough weed, and water hemp and pigweed are really tough to kill weeds too. And we don't have too much water hemp on this side of the field, but down on that end there's some that I'll probably have to pull out, or you know, they can get up to like 5 to 6 feet tall. So in the beans, they're gonna be sticking up quite a bit and make a pretty good seed head and drop a whole bunch of seeds of pretty much Roundup resistant weeds. Those are these weeds, these lamb's quarters and the water hemp. They're only you know, you can only kill them as long as, you know, if they're shorter than this, like this normally will kill, but you can see all the dead ones around it. That's a little bit more Roundup resistant than these other ones that have died. So it's just tough to kill this stuff. And I mean, it looks good overall. We're gonna have really good food plot, but there is gonna be a few weeds in some areas. I'm so glad I came back in here and did spray, because there was a lot more. As you can tell, all these little brown shriveled up things are all weeds. Like this spot was really weedy. You can see all these little brown. This is right here a really good. This is that lamb's quarters, a bigger one, and this is the water hemp or pigweed. This stuff is even tougher than the lamb's quarters. But both these are the two primary, the two toughest weeds to kill in food plots. Like, look at how big that is. That's as big as the beans. This thing will be 5 or 6 feet tall. And look at, there's another one. The deer actually like browsing on this stuff, but it's super tough to kill. So last year we had a lot of beans in this field too, and down there in that corner there was a ton of it. I ended up having to come back middle of the summer and pull out a lot of it. And if you leave them lay like that, they're gonna grow back into the soil, so you got to pick them up and throw them off to the side of the plot. But yeah, I had probably at least a couple hours, maybe like mixed amongst a couple days, probably, oh, I don't know, maybe 4 to 6 hours of pulling weeds out here in this field alone last year, because I wanted a perfect, pristine bean field. But the main key is just planting thick so the beans can canopy over, and spraying early when the beans are small and when the weeds are small. Because like I said, when they get this big, they're virtually Roundup resistant 100%. You can see it's kind of damaged by the spray, by the second spraying, and even that survived the second spraying. But there's a weed that didn't, there's a weed that didn't. All these little brown shriveled up things are weeds that died out. So it's kind of a, there's like, spraying is, you know, very time important. But overall, this plot's gonna turn out amazing. These beans are well ahead of most of all the weeds. There'll be a few weeds that make it, that'll probably end up sticking up through the beans, but the weeds in the corn you won't see from the outside. But you know, there's weeds in here too. Look at the size of that water hemp. You know, you can never get them all. But yeah, that's probably gonna conclude this video. I know I've been talking more about weeds than the actual food plot here, but yeah, this side looks pretty clean. But like I said, last year this side of the field down here had kind of a yellowish tint, but when the beans got about knee high, they kind of darkened up. So I don't know if they just, you know, the roots got bigger and, you know, they got to more of our fertilizer. But you can see some of my fertilizer from yesterday still. I broadcasted that right before the rain, specifically on this side of the plot, because, you know, I want to get these beans going. There's not many weeds on this side of the plot. I got a really good kill over here this year, so I want to get these beans going so they can canopy over and shade out, you know, when the weeds do start coming back in. So here's a look at that replanted corn area quick. Got it super thick. Look at all the corn that's getting pulled out though. See it all? So they're getting thinned out by the cranes, and with all this rain we're going to be getting, some of it will definitely take off. I got some soybeans in here too in case they pull out all the corn. But yeah, I'm gonna have to plant my corn thicker and my beans thicker next year, just to, well, the beans are thick enough, but I really want to get them to canopy over quick so I can get a really good weed control. Because the thinner your plots are, the more weeds you're going to have. Because literally when you have a bunch of Roundup resistant weeds like this that make millions of seeds, the best weed control is getting your plot to canopy over after the first spraying. Because I hate having to come back and spend more time spraying and more money spraying, and you still don't end up with the best result, because once the weeds get this big, you have to pull them or you just leave them. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I know it's kind of a long video, but I just wanted to quick talk to you more about that weed control stuff, especially in these wetter areas. At home in our backyard, we don't have hardly any of these issues. Those are perfectly weed-free food plots. It's just drier ground. There's not these wetter soil weeds. So one of our other fields has a lot of this stuff too. It's actually worse than this field. So that'll be coming in up, you know, that's about a 1 acre food plot too, mainly all corn. That's going to be in a future video too. So yeah, thanks for watching. Catch you in the next.